Freedom without readiness is terrifying. Freedom without preparation is not empowerment, it is abandonment. Hi everyone, welcome back to Edit Trick. Today's topic is all about love, care, persistence, and the power of guidance. Well, I have to share a story with you all which is very relevant to today's topic. It's a story about a parrot which was domesticated in a hilly hill. The parrot used to repeat day and night what his master had taught him. But he used to say, freedom, freedom, freedom. He used to say this. A traveler came to that inn for the first time, and the words of that parrot really touched him to the core. Because in the fight for the freedom for his country, he had been arrested several times, and what that parrot said, freedom, freedom, and freedom, in the stark silence of the night, always it used to resound in his heart. And then he would remember the days of his imprisonment, and he would remember that his own inner feeling, that even he used to cry the same three words about freedom. And the traveler, he tried to got up and tried to free the parrot who was desirous of freedom. But the traveler tried to drag the parrot out of its cage, but the parrot wouldn't come out of the cage. It held fast to the bars of the cage and shouted, still loudly, freedom, freedom, and freedom. With great difficulty, the traveler was able to bring the parrot out of the cage, and after setting him free in the sky, he was very free and he fell asleep. But when he got up early in the morning, he saw the same parrot sitting happily inside the cage and was crying, freedom, freedom, and freedom. Here, the parrot kept shouting, freedom, 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 the words which was taught by his master. Well, the traveler believed that the parrot wanted freedom because he himself had suffered imprisonment. He projected his own pain on to the bird. When he opened the cage, the parrot resisted and it was afraid. Well, the cage had become its comfort zone. And when he finally released the parrot, it returned to the cage. Here, it's never learned how to live outside the cage because the parrot is not weak, but it is unprepared. Because this is where the student scaffolding comes in. So when we are speaking about the students are like the parrot in the story, many students may say that don't give me so much, or give me freedom, or let me choose. But deep inside, they still depend on answers. They fear failure, they return to rote learning and stay inside the safe cage of marks and instructions, where they repeat the words yet own understanding. So, here, sometimes the learning something and trying new, it becomes impossible because with step by step support and encouragement, anyone can achieve their goal. That's exactly what scaffolding in education is all about, helping students until they are ready to succeed on their own. When we are speaking about scaffolding, what is scaffolding? We have scaffolding in all the areas, in wherever you have in the company and in your real life, everywhere you have a scaffolding. That what is scaffolding in education? When we're speaking about scaffolding in education, scaffolding means giving temporary support to students while they learn something new. and slowly removing that support once they are ready to do it on their own. Just like construction scaffolding, it's not permanent, but it's essential. When we are speaking about this scaffolding, we are talking about how many types of scaffoldings are there in education. The type 1 of scaffolding, it's a cognitive scaffolding, which involves providing learners with strategies like models or a kind of a prompts or a kind of an hints or a feedback or a sort of a questioning and aids which makes them think, and which involves reasoning and which involves kind of a problem solving questions, which makes them to do the task on their own by giving some sort of a support by the teacher, which is type 1 cognitive scaffolding. When we are speaking about type 2 scaffolding, which is metacognition scaffolding. So here, metacognition scaffolding involves helping learners plan, monitor, and evaluate their own learning process and outcomes. So here, the metacognition is something where the teacher helps the learner to develop that kind of a thinking process where the students themselves they try to evaluate that how the learning process is going on. So this is a second type of scaffolding which is metacognitive. When we are speaking about the third type of scaffolding which is motivational scaffolding. So what is this motivational scaffolding? So this is something about which involves fostering learning interest. It could be an engagement or a sort of an self-efficacy in the learning task where it could be involving rewards or a kind of a constructive feedback. So this is a motivational scaffolding where the teacher provides some sort of an encouragement with the student who comes out of their comfort zone and try to complete the task in understanding the content. So these are the three scaffolding in education. Type 1, let me repeat it again so that like it will be easy for you to just get on that. The type 1 scaffolding is cognitive scaffolding where the teacher scaffolds the student to develop the learning depend upon reasoning kind of hints or a kind of feedback, and it makes the student to think logically. That's a cognitive scaffolding. Type 2 is metacognitive scaffolding, which is something it helps the student to evaluate where the teacher helps the student to monitor themselves, the learning process. That's the motivational or sorry, cognitive scaffolding. When we're speaking about the motivational scaffolding, it's something related to the teacher scaffolds giving some sort of a motivation, it kind of a constructive feedback or a kind of an learner's interest or kind of when where the students are actively involved where they're not able to come out of their comfort zone. So when we are speaking about the scaffolding, like what is the role of the teacher in providing scaffolding? Why the teacher has to provide scaffolding in a classroom? Because it's very important that if the teacher is not providing a scaffolding at the regular intervals, the student will become the parrot in the cage like a story. So here comes the role of the teacher in providing scaffolding. So how exactly the scaffolding has to be done? So this is the first step. The step 1 is the teacher as a diagnostician. So here the teacher first understands what the student stand, where the student stands and what they already know and what they struggle with. So here more about she understands the student in a very deeper way, that what is the level of understanding of the student and what sort of a support that she need to give to the student. This is a kind of a problem, analyzing the problem where the teacher analyzes the problem. So that's the reason this is a first step of scaffolding. When we're speaking about the first is identifying the problem, then the teacher as a role model. So here the teacher as a model. So whatever the content the teacher she wanted to teach over here, she demonstrates the task. Whereas thinking aloud, or it could be showing some sort of a steps or giving some sort of a clear examples or a kind of a hints or how the task has to be done, the teacher she models herself. Like she comes up, she stands and she does it, giving some sort of an example that it's exactly how the thing has to be done. The teacher acts as a model over here in making the content understand to the students. When we are speaking about first one as identifying the problem, and the second one is a teacher acts as a model, and then the teacher acts as a guide here. So how does she act as a guide over here? Instead of giving direct answers, the teacher asks guiding questions. All right. So the teacher, she only acts like a guide where it is moreover like a student-centered learning, moreover, focusing on the learning part of the student, not just simply like traditional learning methodology where the teacher demonstrates, she comes, she lectures, and she leaves. It isn't like that. So only the teacher, she acts as a facilitator or as a guide, we can say. So instead of giving some sort of a direct answers, she may ask or he may ask like, why do you think this works in this way? Or what do you think which comes next? Or why do you think that it has to happen in this way? If you are in this particular position, in a particular character, how would you react? So this sort of a guiding question will make the student think and to answer based upon the whatever the content the teacher is teaching, rather than the teacher giving the direct answer. So here the teacher acts as a guide. So when we're speaking about the guide, the next one is the teacher as a support system to the child. All right. So coming about the guide where she guides the student, and then over here now the teacher acts as a support system. So how, why she has to act as a support system? If the teacher, she's able to say everything whatever like which she has on the content and all, then it has nothing to learn for the student. So here she only be a support for a limited time. The teacher provides some sort of a hints or a kind of a visuals or some sort of a sentence starters or a kind of a checklist or a kind of an word bank or a kind of an encouragement, rewards, especially when students they feel stuck in doing a particular task and not really very confident in completing the task or understanding the content. So over here, she acts as a support system where the student will be able to do the task on their own. So when we are speaking about the teacher as a support system, the next is the teacher as an observer. So here, when after she provides a support to the child, she observes the learning process of the child, like how exactly the learning process is doing, that how the child is independently doing the task. That is, the teacher consistently watches progress and knows exactly where to step in and where to step back to let child do it on own. So it's something like where the child will be able to do it rather than with some sort of a support, with the guidance of the teacher, the student try to do the task on their own. It's not just simply applicable, it is applicable to all the subjects and all the content whatever we are teaching in the classroom. So it's really very important that the teacher scaffolding is really very important. Now the teacher as a gradual release manager. So this is actually where the learning happens. From step one, from just identifying the problem as a guide, as a support, and then the teacher is able to be over here an observer, and then now she slowly becomes the release manager. Like I do, the teacher models it, then we do, the teacher does with the student, and then you do. That is how the student is able to do the content on their own over here. That is, the responsibility slowly shifts from teacher to student. This is the true technique of scaffolding, where it is beginning from the teacher, and where the learner, he becomes completely independent of doing the task on their own. But from the beginning till the end, the teacher just becomes a guide and scaffolds the child, providing a kind of a support where the child will be able to do the task on their own. If you're speaking about scaffolding in education, we have just checked about what is a role of a teacher in scaffolding. But why do you think that the scaffolding really matters? Because when teacher they scaffold effectively, what happens? This is what it happens with the child, because the students gain confidence, and learning anxiety reduces as well. It's not about all the time, most of the students in a classroom, they are not of the same ability level. So some may are really very quick in completing the task, and some may will be really like stuck with something, and some may really not interested to do it. So when the teacher is providing an appropriate scaffolding in a classroom, the anxiety of all the students and some of the students who really need support can come down to an extent. Critical thinking improves to solve any sort of a life problem. So when we are speaking about critical thinking, this is a universal concept of developing a critical thinking in every lesson. So that critical thinking will develop if a teacher, she scaffolds to solve any sort of a life problem, rather than just getting stuck to only the content. When scope for self learning, and the child will be independent, because a teacher, a great teacher, doesn't just teach the content. A great teacher teaches how to learn, because that's the true power of education. So scaffolding is not just simply a matter of like in a classroom where they are teaching a particular content and it is done. It's absolutely not that, because the teachers are preparing the child for the future, where the child will become independent, and at the same time they will be able to solve any sort of a life problem. If you, if I have to ask you that how your learning or how the teaching process that is really effective in your classroom, then definitely you all have to adopt this scaffolding. If you're really a creative teacher, that these steps will definitely help you. But if you found this really helpful, then I request you all to please like, share, and subscribe for more insight and modern techniques and learning, because education isn't about pressure, it's about support. Thank you.